Just for you. Yay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we are live here with our Week 3 broadcast, and I'm excited to have Cindy Moylan with us, Denise Kuntz, and Mary Elliott, three of my amazing team leads. And we're excited to dive into some of the questions that you posed last week on your completion form. And we've already kind of been chit-chatting beforehand, and so we're excited to dive into these questions. But I also want to remind you of the Today's back channel. So if you're watching live, you can get on that back channel, and I see there's already a few people. Hi, Paula. Hi, Kim. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Yvonne. Hi, Christine. Hi, Rachel.
So we're live here with our Week 3 broadcast.
Uh-oh. Sorry. Hang on just a second. Let me...
I'm excited to have Cindy Moylan and Mary Elliott, three of my amazing team.
Somehow I'm getting playback.
And we're excited to dive into
It's the instant replay.
Yeah, it must be the instant replay.
Completion form. And we've already kind of been...
Hang on just a second, guys.
...beforehand, and so we're excited to dive into these questions. But I also...
It was me. I had it open on YouTube. Sorry about that. So, yeah, you just got to hear the playback of that. But so anyways, we're excited about having your questions come in on the back channel. And we're going to go ahead and dive into some of the questions that you asked last week. So... let's dive into some of the logistical questions related to the course that I want to address first. And one of the main things that came in was lots of panic related to your tweets not showing up in the feed in Blackboard. Don't panic. It's okay if it doesn't show up. That happens a lot with new Twitter users. And I was still able to track down all of the tweets, and so you should have a grade for that now in your My Grades. And so keep tweeting, keep retweeting, and I posted some strategies in the virtual hallway if you'd like to try that out. To see if you can't get those to start showing up in the feed, but don't panic if they don't. Let's see, we have another question related to sort of the overwhelming nature of the content of this course, and yes, it's 5 weeks. I've crammed it full of good content. But what I would suggest there in terms of not feeling overwhelmed is, you know, of course, don't wait till Sunday to start looking at everything. Really try to kind of bite off a little bit at a time early in the week and try to kind of digest it, and don't try to tackle it all at once. So that's one strategy. And the other is make sure if I have a moonwalking bear icon next to it, it's really not required. It's more of an extension, and so you don't have to you know, follow every rabbit trail that you come across. Even though it's tempting to do that, it can make things overwhelming. The other point I'll make about week 2 is that, and my team leads can attest to this because it's the same way for them, it's the most overwhelming week for all of us because it was setting up your Google Plus communities and it was setting up your key point documents and the tweets. So we added a lot in week 2. The good news is it's clear sailing from here on out. So week 3, 4, and 5, exact same routine in terms of what's required of you. So they're saying a little cheer, I'm saying a little cheer, and hopefully you are as well. Let's go ahead and address a question from Elaine Wagner of Creators. She wanted to know if I could give just a quick look ahead of what's coming in the course. And so I'm happy to do that. So you're in week 3 right now, and so you're learning all about designing and developing instruction with technology and the processes behind that. And then you're learning about really neat resource and content curation tools. So that's what we're covering this week, week 3. Week 4, you're going to move on to teaching information literacy and digital citizenship. And the tools that you're going to experiment with in week 4 are websites and apps. And then finally, in week 5, we have spurring change as teacher leaders. And this is going to be sort of the inspiration module that you need to sort of take all this stuff that we've thrown at you this 5 weeks and make a plan for how can I make this actionable? What small steps can I take? How can I inspire other teachers and that kind of thing. So week 5 is a really rewarding week to get to. And the tool for the week 5 is multimedia tools. So that was just for you, Elaine, to give you a preview of what's coming. All right, so we had a really great question come in about Twitter from Quentin Barnes on Denise's team, Innovators, and it just so happens that she has a really great response for this one. So his question was, what are some ways Twitter could be used in a science classroom? So Denise, do you have some ideas for Quentin?
I do, and Quentin and anyone else who teaches science, I noticed that there were several of you in our course, and that's pretty exciting. That's been my career as a veteran science teacher, but you know, coming in and learning to add Twitter into my teaching space has definitely been a challenge. Now, I think Quentin is actually a high school science teacher, and so maybe these ideas would be more applicable for him, but I jotted down just a couple of things, and the first one would really apply to anybody who teaches anything. We could all use Twitter like this. Just have a feed that's dedicated to the class due dates and assignments, and that would really be more appropriate for maybe intermediate to high school, but that's just one quick hint. Another thing that would be super interesting, and again, you could differentiate this for any topic that you teach, but specifically for science, if you will just go to Twitter and just search science news, it will bring up several interesting science feeds, science in the news feeds. And you could assign this to your students and have them follow that, but what would make it really interesting would have them maybe be research and, you know, maybe go to Google Docs and maybe compile some interesting information about the latest trends and information in science, or you could divide your kids into groups and you could assign them these Twitter feeds about science and opposing ideas. And we know there's a lot of opposing ideas out there in science, and so of course you'd have to be careful with that. There would be some logistics there, and you wouldn't want to pick a topic that would be too divisive, but you could have them really research and share with each other in a collaborative way some of the different opposing viewpoints about science and what's happening in the world of science today. I just think having your kids follow some of these news feeds would be incredibly interesting. I was following some today, and honestly, the things that people are learning about bugs, I was like, really? It was totally fascinating and totally interesting. So I'm crazy. I enjoy stuff like that. In any field, especially science, you could formulate questions about what you're researching, and you could tweet those questions to those researchers or those people that are in the field of science, whether they're educators, scientists. I know in the past I've had my kids connect with people at NASA. There's all sorts of experts out there that are interested in inputting into the education field. One of the ideas that I ran across just today that I really loved was to assign your students each a different science career that they're interested in, and I know that is K through 12. I've done that with my kids every year. I let them find something that they can really relate to in the science field, and then they could use Twitter to track the different trends that are happening in those careers and keep a daily journal and then share that in a collaborative way. There's a million ways. And then just something that I would do, and I've actually planned for this year, is something real simple like tracking weather patterns, just tracking feeds of different things that are going on in the world of science. And again, all of these ideas could be used in any of the disciplines of teaching. So Twitter is live. It's happening now. There's great people out there. There's great platforms. There's another big community. The last thing I'm going to say is I want to say it's called Twitter Education, and there's just an endless amount of possibilities for science. So Quentin, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely some great ideas for science. And Denise, I have to say, knows her stuff. So she was the Keller Teacher of the Year, right, Denise?
Yes.
Very well deserved award. And
thank you.
To have you guys introduce yourselves, and I apologize. So real quickly, if you wouldn't mind just quickly introducing yourself, your team, a little bit about yourself for the broadcast.
Well, go ahead, Mary. I'll go last.
Well, I'm Mary Elliott, and I'm the team leader for Ignite.
And Mary, tell them where you work.
I'm a faculty member at Baylor, and I'm also in cohort number 10 in the Educational Leadership Doctoral Program at Charlton. And I am in my third year, almost close to taking comps in September. And if I survive it,
very cool.
I can't wait.
Close to the end.
Close to the end.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Cindy.
Okay. I'm Cindy Moylan. I am team collaborator, and I am a 6th grade math teacher in Eagle Mountain, Saginaw, which is just north of Fort Worth.
Very cool.
Very good.
And Denise?
And I'm Denise Kuntz. I teach 5th grade science and social studies in Keller ISD at Trinity Meadows Intermediate, and you can see the graduation cap. So wait, there's a sound effect for this. So I think, Cindy, aren't we both about to graduate? Aren't you graduating? Cindy and I graduate in 18 little days. And if you didn't hear that sound effect, there you go. We're super excited.
Yes, I'm very proud because actually all of my team leads, with the exception of Mary, are in the master's program about to graduate in August, and I get to hood them, and I'm so excited for that day. I know they're counting it down.
Oh, yes.
So excited. And can I just say, for anybody who's even thinking about this degree, nobody asked me to say this, but I have learned so much going through the classes that I have with Dr. Baker. I will say it's really brought my classroom into the 21st century. Nobody asked me to say that, but I'm just telling you, that's why I'm wearing this little hat, because of Dr. Baker, so it's pretty exciting.
Oh, thank you for saying that, Denise.
I was really behind in my skills with technology, and I've used my electives in the doctoral program to take a lot of the technology classes with Dr. Baker, and it's really updated me as well. Good courses.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of good courses.
Okay, all of your checks are in the mail.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to some questions that we had about, specifically about Hangouts and broadcast. And Whitney Dudick from Knowledge Seekers wanted to know what are some of the features of Hangouts. And so I'm using Hangouts on Air, which allows me to basically broadcast to the world live video in a Hangout. And I'll be able to show you some of the features that I can see over here. So for instance, let me screen share. So if I have people in a Hangout with me, I can share my screen. So for instance, I could share the Today's Meet feed with you, and I could show you something in our Blackboard course. It's a way to all see someone's screen in real time. So that's screen share. It's a pretty neat feature of Hangouts. Of course, you've seen our Google Effects, which we just can't resist using in every broadcast, but that's an add-on here to Hangouts, and it allows you, of course, to have these little neat graphics that follow you around, but sometimes I've seen the glasses can't really keep up with my face if you move pretty quickly. But that's a neat feature as well. And then it's all integrated with Drive, so you have an option over here on the left, at least you do if you start the Hangout, to all co-edit documents and Drive, and so that's integrated as well. So some pretty neat features, and of course you all experienced the screen capture feature, so you can take pictures within a Hangout. So some really neat features of Hangout, so thanks for that question, Whitney. Sarah Mabry from Collaborators wanted to know, is there a way to pre-record the broadcast? And there actually is. So I could do a broadcast where I basically just I just record it, but I don't send the link to anyone. So it's broadcasting, but no one's watching because I didn't broadcast the broadcast. And so yes, in that sense, you can record and then you can send the playback link out. So it wouldn't be a live broadcast, but it would be a recording that you made inside of Hangouts on Air. And so it's really kind of a workaround if you wanted to do some screen capture video, rather than using Jing or any of the other tools that you're learning about this week. You can use Hangouts on Air as a video content creation tool by using Hangouts on Air. So that was a great question. And then Cheyenne Cook had a question about a good source for tips and tricks to use Google Hangouts, and there's some really robust Google communities that you can join where it's basically just people troubleshooting issues that they run into, and then also collaborating on ideas that they find. And Denise, you found a website I think we were talking about beforehand of
Yeah.
what did you say it was?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't have the exact link in front of me, but what I loved about it is that it's 40 different communities that are used around the world for educators, and they all look really outstanding, and they are Google communities that you can join and be part of. And so I actually sent you that link, Dr. Baker, and I think she's going to send that out to everyone.
Absolutely. I'll post that in the virtual hallway afterwards. So I'm just kind of monitoring the conversation going on over here in the back channel, and I see that Kathy Rodriguez has a great question. How do you upload a Hangout session to YouTube? Well, you can't do just a regular Hangout. You can't record that to YouTube. Only Hangouts on Air can be integrated with your YouTube channel. And there's actually a setting that Denise and I were talking about before this broadcast started that you have to enable on your YouTube channel in order to get it to sync up. And so I'll also put a link to that in the virtual hallway for you, Kathy, so you can start playing around with actually broadcasting using your YouTube channel. Okay, some other questions. There was a question from Veronica Berrigan and from Team Ignite, and she wanted to know, are there Google Hangout effects for iPad? And we learned, because we researched this, that they're not directly Google's tools. They're sort of add-on tools that you can use. But because the effects use Flash, they're not likely to work on your iPad. And she also wanted to know, can one participate in a live broadcast without a camera? And the answer to that, guys, is...
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So a really neat feature of Hangouts is you can provide people that you want to hang out with just a simple phone number from here that they can call in on their phone and participate. So they don't even need a webcam or a computer. They could actually call into the Hangout, and all it would show is just a little tile with their name on it, but they could still hear everything going on. So yes, you can definitely participate without a
also chat in too, right?
Yes, absolutely. So if you don't have a way to speak into the session, you can use chat. So several ways to still connect. All right. The last question, and Denise actually has some really neat ideas for this. So have you experienced success integrating video conferencing with a guest speaker or expert in your classroom? That came from Stephanie Winnett of Collaborators.
Sure. And, you know, there's obviously endless ways that you can use this, and we could all share several, but one that's really interesting is I've had guest speakers come in the past, and they would like to come back the next year, whether it's for Career Day or being a science teacher. I've had different scientists and, you know, doctors and vets and different people come into my classroom. But one thing we're going to try this year in order to increase their availability is to do Hangouts. And one of the neatest things I've done in my classroom was to have a scientist who specializes in the West Nile virus, and she's actually come in before and shown my kids exactly how they test for the virus, how they find the mosquitoes, what they do with the mosquitoes, and it was just so excellent. I wanted to be able to share that again, and so she's going to join us via Hangouts this year, and I had a couple of others that are going to join us, and so it's kind of like a virtual field trip, and they can actually take you into the field, like the scientist is going to take us out into the field, and it's really just a richer experience for the kids. And I think if we'll kind of look at people in that light, and, you know, the experts in that light, virtual field trips, and, you know, you can connect with authors. There's so many different things you can do on Hangouts. Don't disregard Hangouts. If you don't see an immediate use for it in your classroom, I will tell you, you need to really think about that, because there's so many ways to connect with people in our world today that our kids really need to hear about, that are experts that they're not going to get to hear from maybe outside of this tool.
Good point. Good point. I agree. And I'm watching on the back channel, they're talking about the comparable tool, which is Zoom. I've used it. I have. I like them both equally. I like Google because it has some features that Zoom doesn't, and vice versa. The nice thing about Zoom is you don't have to have any account to anything to share the session with someone else. Whereas with a Hangout, the people that you want to hang out with also have to be on Google. And so I find myself more and more, if I have a student that has a question, I can quickly generate a Zoom link, even if they don't have a Google account, and connect with them in this same fashion of video conferencing. So, yes,
and the same goes with Skype. I think a lot of people, you know, that I talked to this week, or several, felt that that was an option. You know,
Yes.
if you're not comfortable with Google Hangouts, find something that you're comfortable with that will allow you to connect with people.
Definitely, definitely. All right, so let's move on to some of the more general questions. And I'll tell you, there were several related to how do you get colleagues who are reluctant to start using technology, or how do you get parents who are reluctant to have their kids use technology? How do you get people to have that buy-in? And we kind of had this really interesting discussion right before we went live about how sometimes we see the value in a tool and we just want to shout it to the rooftops, and we think everyone should see it the same way we do. And you know, one thing we were talking about is how important it is to be empathetic to where a colleague is in their journey to finding value in that tool. But what are some of the other strategies you guys can think of for folks who either they're supporting teachers, so maybe they're instructional technologists, support people, or maybe they're colleagues who just really want their team to step it up with regard to technology integration? So what do you guys, what advice do you have there?
Well, I think first of all, let teachers know that letting teachers know that they don't have to try everything at once because it's all very overwhelming. And I think that allow teachers to choose one or two things that maybe they'll implement for 1 year, for just an entire year, and get used to that, and then they can try other things on down the road. Also, Dr. Baker, I'm going to make a plug for your 549 class, the Media and Technology, just because, again, and I mentioned this when we were before our live broadcast, the textbook in that class, the Integrating Educational Technology into Teaching by Rogler, is such a phenomenal book that talks about how technology just sprouted up, and it goes into the language of technology. And I think it should be a resource book in every single school, that any teacher who just feels overwhelmed because they don't understand the language, they don't understand the operating systems, they don't understand software versus hardware versus everything else, can go and begin to read how all this developed, and it begins to take the pieces of the puzzle and put it together.
So what I hear you saying, Mary, is it, you know, for teachers who are just starting out with it, it takes patience, and it takes starting slow, and it takes not letting perfect get in the way of progress.
Exactly.
That's what I hear you saying.
Exactly.
What were you going to say, Cindy?
Well, I was going to say, when it comes to getting other people on board, I mean, they're just like the weight. Like you can do everything in the world that is amazing, but until they, like you said, like, until they see the value in it. So let's say I have a social studies teacher that says, that's really cool, but I don't know how your math stuff could apply to me directly to their content area and show them the value. Then maybe, just maybe, I can get them on, you know, the technology. They've seen it. They might think about it for a little bit. And I've had a lot of teachers that come back to me after they've seen my success with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're waiting to, and if they're like, oh, well, maybe I'll try that out now that I see that it's not an epic fail and it's really not that hard. Like, for example, we had a teacher on our team this year that was technology in her personal life. She didn't want it to enter into the classroom because she was afraid to screw up in front of the kids. And so to walk her through it, you know, and be like, if I mess up, it's on me, and you get to save face in front of the kids, you know, because I don't care if I mess up. And that seemed to get her to come around, and she would try it on her own. So a lot of it is a fear of failure. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. I think that that's a big part.
I agree, and I think if you look back at the content from last week, and let me do a screen share really quick, because this relates to a question that Lillian Hinson from Team Ignite came up with. So I heard Cindy mentioning sort of those stages of adoption. So there is that group of teachers who need to see it. They need to see it proven by other teachers before they're willing to try it. And so, you know, I think when you're working with colleagues, it's so important to understand those different stages of adoption. And I think that's actually, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here's in the week 2 soft chalk, you can find information about those stages of adoption and sort of being okay with where people are at on their journey. And then I think the other thing too, and we talked about this a little bit before, is especially if you're a support person for someone who's new to technology, you have to be a translator from the technical, you know, jargon to the teaching world, and you have to translate that so that it's not overwhelming, and so that it makes sense for who you're helping. And so I think that's another critical key skill. And so if you're finding yourself really wanting to influence your colleagues or support your colleagues, I think empathy goes a long way, but also your own successes or failures are going to help them decide what they could and could not be successful at. Another thing in the week 2 module was this whole step-by-step process for, okay, if I want to choose one tool next year, literally, if you go through these steps, you can be successful. I think where people tend to mess up with technology integration is that they tend to do it with, I'm going to do these 5 tools in 1 week and try to go through this process, and it just doesn't work. And it doesn't work for the teacher, it doesn't work for the students because they're overwhelmed as well. So if you're looking for step-by-step, you know, how can I be successful, and I think Lillian had that question, definitely go back and revisit the week 2 module. And that actually brings up another question from earlier that I didn't get to, but I'll say it now. Elaine Wagner wanted to know, could you, no, I'm sorry, not Elaine Wagner. Where is that? Yeah, so Kirza Matamoris from Team Creators wanted to know, will we have access to all of this course content after the course is over? And the answer is yes, absolutely. I want you to take anything that you can from this course and hopefully share it with your colleagues, revisit it when you're kind of, you know, wanting to go back and relearn something. And so while the course itself will close at some point when we're done, I'm going to provide you with basically a list of links and resources that I've curated from all the different communities in the KP documents. So you're going to have links to all the SoftChalk. So the answer to that question is yes, you're going to have access to all of this content once the course is over. Let's go back and look at Hannah Parsley from Team Innovators actually had a question, and we kind of touched on this some last week, but what are your favorite tools to use when integrating technology into content area lessons for younger learners? What ideas do we have there to share? And that's a pretty broad question.
I think that just goes back to something that I think we really need to remind people of, is that what you have in your classroom and what you have in your school and your district is going to look so different from what other people have. And so what might be a favorite thing for me, like one of my favorite pieces of hardware that I use, it's, you know, just technology hardware per se, that I use every single day in the science lab for my kids, is a document camera. And you know, I leave it on, and as they're finished with work that they're proud of, they can come up and they can show the class, and they don't need permission to do that. But you might not have a document camera, so, you know, hearing that might discourage somebody else. But, you know, I just think for me the rule of thumb is every lesson I try to integrate one piece of technology, that fits in with the lesson, that enhances the lesson, that's not overwhelming. And sometimes you really have to dig around and look around and ask people and fail a few times. So I couldn't give just like one favorite thing, but as a general rule of thumb, it's a favorite, and it stays on my list of things that I would use. If it's collaborative, if it brings the kids together, and, you know, if it feels successful, but I never just stick technology in.
I'm sorry, Denise, I didn't get that last part, but I'll revisit it, and then anything you talked about I'll post in the virtual hallway.
You got it.
Okay.
One of the things that I've used that I think, even though I teach college students, I think that younger students could also use this. And if a school had a learning management system like Blackbook or Blackboard or Moodle, something like that, that usually have some sort of wiki function. I've had groups of students go to the computer, open up a wiki, and they will incorporate into the wiki what they learned that day after the lesson. And I think it doesn't matter the age of the student or the grade level, students could do that, and it's a real good way for the teacher to go and read those then and assess, did they get what they were supposed to get that day. So real simple.
Good tips.
That's good.
I think too, you know, when we get to
I would say my favorite is probably.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Sorry, I think there's a delay on me. One of the things that we use a lot at my school is like the student response system. So like Socrative or Kahoot or Infused Learning or something like that. Those for our formative assessments because they're diagnostic and fast, and they give us information immediately that we can then do something with. So I think narrow it down to my favorite thing, that would be it.
Very good tips. And I think too, in week 4 when we start looking at apps and websites and apps, There's so much to share there. And so keep your ears open in your team communities and in your KP documents, because those are the places where you're going to find these little nuggets and tools that you didn't even know existed, and really how they can add value for other teachers. And so it's a place to share in your communities. And so I'm looking at the time, and it's always so amazing to me how fast it flies by. Like 30 minutes, and boom, it's over. But I do want to be cognizant of all of your time this evening on a Tuesday night, and I thank you for watching and for participating in the back channel. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast. So everybody say bye.
Bye.